Please welcome your host, Dion Taylor.
Hey guys, Dion Taylor here. So today I'm going to talk about the Scheduling Operations Agent, which is a new agent and an autonomous agent inside of Dynamics 365 Field Service. And you're probably going to wonder, okay, well, what does this thing do exactly? Well, its main purpose is to make life for dispatchers a lot easier. So if you know anything about dispatching, then you probably are aware of the fact that it's usually pretty chaotic, right? Usually dispatchers have to make changes on the fly. This could be because maybe a technician was out sick, so they need to reschedule other people's schedules, right? Or maybe a customer canceled a job or multiple jobs have been canceled. Those are all things that could happen and which require the dispatcher to very quickly shift things around. This is where the agent comes in. With just a simple couple of clicks, the new schedule can be generated or suggested by the agent. Let me show you exactly how it works. So the scheduling operations agent is really meant to be used when you quickly need to clean up or tweak a singles resources day, right? So what happens is a dispatcher can invoke the scheduling operations agent by just clicking on a resource, right-clicking, and then you can see that it says here, suggest schedule, right? Now, I would be a really good candidate for this because as you can see, I have a booking here that's been canceled, and then I have a couple of other bookings following later after this work order was supposed to be finished and completed, right? So that's really what it's used for, right? So what I can do is I can now click here on suggest schedule. So let's go ahead and do that. And what you'll see here now on the side is I have a couple of different options that I can utilize for this particular schedule for myself. So we can see here the resource, right, is myself. I can also go ahead and pick a scheduling goal. So I can maximize the utilization, right? So that really means that it's only going to look at whatever of these different options I have checked. And we're going to get back to that in a second. Or I can say we're going to front load anything that is high priority work. If I'm using this maximize utilization, it's not going to look at the high priority work, right? It's just going to maximize my day, as least travel time as possible, right? All those types of things. So let's just go ahead and do the maximize utilization so you can see what that looks like. Then I can select a time range, right? I can do this for the next 2 days, 3 days, for the end until the end of the day today, or I can pick a custom range, right? So I can say from this date to that time to, right, the end of this particular day. Now that's really 12 o'clock midnight, but you can also go in here and again, adjust this, right? So let's just pick the 15th here. That's what we're looking at. And let's just gonna go ahead and say, we're gonna look at the entire schedule from 8 o'clock until, and I work until, what is this, like 6 o'clock. So I'm going to say 6 p.m. That's going to be really the custom date range and time range that I want to optimize, right? So that's this entire day. Then you can see the time zone, right, that you want to see this in. I'm in the Eastern time zone, so hence I'm going to keep this. And then we can also select what other requirements we want to use for this schedule. That means that I'm not just going to reorganize the ones that I have over here, right? I want to use a particular view that I've put together. And you can see here, this is actually, well, you can't really see that because I call it something else, but that is my view that shows all of the unscheduled work order requirements. If you have other views, as you can see, you can pick other views from there as well. And then we can choose whether or not we want to make sure that we are matching required characteristics. So as you may or may not know, we can actually assign these characteristics or skills, whatever you want to call it, to work orders, and then also to resources. And that means that, for example, if I have a work order that needs somebody that has an electrical skill or a particular certification, right, it will only book that particular work order to a resource that has those characteristics, those skills. That's what that means. Then matching territories, right? A work order can be assigned to a territory depending on where the service account's territory is. And then again, we can also assign those territories to our resources. So hence, right, matching the territories, making sure that somebody that's located in New York will also get a resource that's located in New York. And then we have schedule within time promised window. Now, what that means is that the work orders can actually have time windows filled out, right? That we've given those time windows to our customers. So for example, we could have told our customer that somebody will be out to their location between 9 a.m. and 12 a.m. on April 15th. Now, having this checked means that the scheduling operations agent will actually honor those times and is going to schedule those work orders in that promised time frame. Now, you have to be aware of this, that if there is a booking that's already on the schedule that you see up here that has an expired promise window, then the agent is actually going to delete that booking from here, right? It's not going to do anything with that because, again, right, that time has already expired, so it's not going to schedule that. And lastly, this particular box that says use predictive travel time, if you have that checked, then the scheduling operations agent will use historical traffic data to provide a better estimate of how long it's going to take for a resource to travel to the customer side. And it's going to do that for each individual booking. If you don't check that, then the agent is going to use the average travel time to come up with that estimated travel time. So let's go ahead and check that. And now let's run the agent and click here on the Suggest Schedule button. So as you can see, it's now analyzing the current schedule. It's also looking at the different statuses, and I'll talk to you about that a little bit later, what I mean by that. And then as you can see, it now is showing the suggested schedule, but it's also showing me my previous schedule, right? So this doesn't mean that these bookings that are in that suggested schedule, that they have been created yet, because they haven't, right? At this particular time, I have the ability to compare both of them. This is my current schedule. This is my new schedule. And I can even here see on the map also the route that I'm going to be taking, right? So you can kind of see that over here. So I can do a couple of different things from here. I can click here on adjust settings, and I can go back and make changes to it. So if I click on that, right now I can go ahead and change the settings that I have. So let's do that again. I'm going to do uncheck use predictive travel time. And I'm going to do, again, the button, click the button, suggest schedule. Now it's going to do the same thing. It's going to analyze my schedule. It's going to analyze any bookings that have not been scheduled. And here we go. Now it's scheduling some other things for me, as you can see. And the map should come up shortly, but it doesn't matter. You just saw that earlier. So from here, what I can do is I can then say, okay, I'm happy with this schedule, and I'm going to get rid of the previous schedule, and I'm just going to schedule, right? I'm going to create those bookings that were suggested here. And I can do that by just hitting that apply button over here. And as you can see, now it's going to update my schedule and create those new bookings, the new schedule for me, right? Because I'm the resource for which I actually ran the agent. And you saw the notification that says new schedule applied. Let me just go ahead and refresh that. There we go. I didn't even have to refresh it. It was already on there. But you can see here that this particular booking that was canceled was simply ignored, right? It didn't remove it, but it did ignore it, and it just booked something else basically on top of that, right? Created a double booking, which is fine because, right, this is one that has been canceled. And if you don't want to show those canceled bookings on your schedule board, you can even go ahead and say, you know what, I want to turn them off. I don't care about that. And there you go. This looks a lot better. Okay, so now let's talk about setup, right? Now, what I did want to mention is that the scheduling operations agent is a consumption-based paid service. Yes, even today when it's still in preview, this is still a paid service. So this means that if you want to try out this agent, you're going to have to configure a billing model in your environment for Microsoft Copilot Studio messages. So currently there are two options when it comes to billing. And you can see that here. You can use a prepaid capacity pack, right, that you can see over here. So you get 25,000 messages for $200. And the other way that you can set this up is a pay as you go. So that basically means that this pay as you go model bills you based on the actual number of messages that your agent uses every month. And if you're buying one of these packs here, this is really prepaid, right? So this means that you're using these message pack subscriptions by buying a chunk of usage upfront, right, through this Microsoft Copilot licensing. But yes, unfortunately, this is required even for the preview. So you need to go ahead and set that up. So once you have set up or bought that subscription, it doesn't really matter, like I said, which one it is. In my particular case, we actually purchased a prepaid pack. So let me just show you real quick on how you can then set that up, because you need to assign some of those messages to your environment. So you can do that by just clicking here on licensing. And then we want to go into Copilot Studio. And as you can see here, I can manage my capacity. So once I click on that, you're going to see that all of my environments now show up. And I just want to be looking for my CE environment. And you can see here that I have 5 messages that have been consumed so far. So now I'm going to drill into that environment so you can see how this has been set up. So what you want to do is you want to just go ahead and add some messages there, right? I had 25,000 in there. There's some other organizations, environments, I should say, that also have some stuff allocated. So this is where you put in a number. And then you can also select what you want to happen when that 500 capacity is actually reached, right? So I'm going to say, hey, draw from the available capacity in my tenant. And that's really how you can do that. You could also, as you can see, if you would have a pay-as-you-go plan, select that here as well, or you can set up a new billing plan. So that's kind of how that works when it comes to billing. Now let's take a look at the setup that we need to do inside of Dynamics 365 Field Service so we can get this working. So the first thing that you want to do, obviously, is enabling the scheduling operations agent, right? So you can do that. Let me just expand this here. You need to navigate here to resources. And then what we want to do is we want to go here to scheduling parameters. And you should only have one row in there called resource scheduling. So let me go ahead and open that up. And then here you can see the agents tab. And all you have to do here is make sure that you set this to on. Now this is going to do a couple of different things, and I'll talk you through that as well. So the first thing that we want to do here now is we want to go to the resources, and then we want to make sure that the start location, let me just go ahead and search actually from my record so that I can show you. We want to make sure that here under, is it under field service? No, it is under scheduling. We need to make sure that this is not set to location agnostic, right? Because if it's location agnostic, we don't really have an address, and therefore the agent is not going to be able to determine the travel time, right? So you need this to be either resource address or organization address, but not location agnostic, because it will not work if you do that. The other thing, obviously, that you have to enable, you got to make sure that this particular resource is right available on the schedule board. And then lastly, I also wanted to mention that when you're creating these resources, let me just actually click on plus here, you're going to see that you have certain types of resources, right? So the scheduling agent is only going to work for users, crew, and contacts. So keep that in mind as well, right? If you have any other ones, equipment, facility pools, etc., those will not work when you're trying to run the agents. So I'm just going to go ahead and discard this setup here, what I try to do here, because I don't want to create a new resource, right? Then another thing that we want to go ahead and edit is our booking statuses. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. So remember earlier that you saw that some of my bookings were not rescheduled, right? For example, the booking that was already completed, because you might not want that, right? You don't want the agent to reschedule a booking also that's in progress or that has a status of traveling, or maybe one that has a status of, right, being on break. I was going to say pausing, but being on break. So what happens here is that by enabling the agent, what it's going to do is it actually is going to add a column here that's called optimization method. So I'm going to add that here so you can kind of see what that looks like. So here I have, right, my canceled is going to be ignored. And you saw that earlier, right, that it just left that booking that was in a canceled state. It didn't do anything with it. It just pretended like it didn't exist. So that's what that ignore status means. Then you also saw that I had a completed work order. And what it's going to do here, because I have my optimization method set to do not move, that's exactly what it does. Leave it be. Don't touch it, right? Do not move it. And I also have that set to my in progress, my on break, and my completed partial status as well. Now, other statuses, so for example, I have a custom status that reads, as you can see, reschedule. That's something that I created so that if a resource can't make it, they can select this reschedule button, and then immediately the dispatcher is going to see that, right, that somebody wants to reschedule their booking. So those work orders, or I should say bookings that have that status set to reschedule, I want the system to take a look at those and optimize those, right? So those can be rescheduled in, right, that optimization. Same thing with scheduled. Anything that has been scheduled but has not been touched yet, I want to optimize that. And then again, going to traveling, we do not want to move any bookings that have been set to the traveling status. So that's kind of how that works. Now, one last thing that I wanted to show here as well is the priority values, right? So let's go ahead and move over to priorities. Let me see where these are. I don't know from the top of my head, so I'm just going to go ahead and search for them. Oops, that's not going to work. Oh, actually, I need to go to the settings area, and then here you can see the priorities. So let me just go ahead and navigate there. Now, there's also a new column in this table, and it's called priority value. So let me just go ahead and click on added columns, and here you can see the priority value. So the agent is not using the level of importance column, right? So that's very important to understand that. So you'll have to go in here into your priorities if you're using priorities, and then you have to go ahead and update that. So you can see here, I have low priority, moderate, urgent, and then emergency priorities as well. Now you can enter any number between 1 and 100. So the higher number you're going to enter, then the higher the priority. That's kind of how that works. And what Microsoft says is you should use priority values that are easy to tell apart from each other, right? So for example, the lowest priority, as you can see here, is 10, right? And then I have my moderate to 50, my urgent to 75, and I have my emergencies with a priority value to 100. So this is very, very clear for the agent to distinguish, right, which one has the highest priority. If I would do like low is 1 and then moderate is 2, and that's harder to distinguish, right, because they're so close apart. So you might want to set it up like something like this. This could also be 25 or whatever, right? Now, once you're complete with all of those things, you have your billing set up, you have your priority value set up, you have your resources set up, and you have those booking statuses set up, then you can go ahead and you can start testing the agents. So what do you guys think? Pretty cool, right? I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe so you'll never miss another video again. Thanks so much for watching. Until next time.